Hey everyone, I'm Zoe Harter-Saunders, a political consultant with a background in voter turnout and grassroots organizing, and today I'm going to be giving you a rundown on voter suppression. Voter suppression is a serious threat to fair elections and equal representation in any democracy, especially one with a pervasive history of patriarchal white supremacy. To better understand the past and present consequences of voter suppression in the US and identify solutions, I'll go over the history of this political tactic and why and how it is currently being utilized by members of the Republican Party to keep targeted groups of voters from the polls. So, first things first, what exactly is voter suppression? Voter suppression is an anti-democratic effort toward making it harder for certain groups of people to vote in order to grab even more disproportionate power and delay the impact of shifting demographics. So many of the issues we face in politics and society today would be eased by a more equally representative government body. When everyone's voice is not equally represented in our politics, we end up with laws that disproportionately advantage those with power and disproportionately disadvantage minority groups. Voter suppression is a political tactic that has been prevalent since the founding of our democracy, when only white male landowners were allowed to vote. Over time, voter suppression tactics have become more subtle, going from explicitly banning specific groups from the polls to placing targeted roadblocks in the way of easy access to voting. And this subtlety can be especially dangerous. Over time, as more groups have fought and obtained their right to vote in this country, voter suppression laws have swiftly followed each win, knocking back their progress. So how are politicians even getting away with passing voter suppression laws in this day and age? Unsurprisingly, they're turning once again to fear-mongering tactics to convince their supporters that voter fraud is rampant and influencing our elections. Although this is completely baseless, the implication that fraudulent votes can and will happen en masse has been used as an excuse to disenfranchise tens of thousands of voters, disproportionately affecting Black and Latinx voters, Native Americans, students, disabled voters, the elderly, impoverished folks, those experiencing homelessness, felons, and people not fluent in English. Personally, I have been affected by numerous voter suppression laws in New York State, especially when I was a student and a young person who moved around a lot. In New York, we have had no early voting, no mail-in voting, no election day registration, and strict rules about eligibility for absentee ballots. Twice, I have received letters after voting saying my vote could not be counted for one reason or another, from my registration being purged to my information being incorrect in an online portal that I checked before voting. As a student, myself and my peers experienced confusion about where we could vote with no polling location on campus and strict deadlines for absentee ballots. In 2012, after missing my absentee ballot deadline, I found myself driving home on election day in order to ensure that I could cast my ballot. Having experienced just a small taste of voter suppression as a young person, it is obvious to me that we have a huge problem with politicians making it harder to vote rather than easier, and leaving a lot of eligible voters shrugging their shoulders, thinking, why bother? A few states have been under fire recently for their excessive discriminatory voter suppression tactics. For example, Georgia's government hit the spotlight a few years ago for enforcing an exact match law, requiring information submitted in voter registration forms to match exactly with state records. Because of errors as small as missing hyphens and apostrophes, added single spaces or characters, and transposed letters, 1,000 voter registrations were canceled in Georgia, and nearly 70% of them belonged to Black voters. And that's just one example in Georgia from a seemingly endless list. AOC made a number of critical points about the fear-mongering tactics that Texan Republicans are using regarding voter fraud during a House Oversight Reform Subcommittee on Civil Rights, discussing the voting bill in the Texas state legislature that prompted state Democrats to flee to Washington, D.C. to prevent its passage. During the hearing, she pointed out that MIT recently concluded that only about 0.00006% of total mail-in votes cast are results of voter fraud. As she bluntly pointed out, that is less likely than being struck by lightning. Voter suppression, as you can see, is a threat to functional democracy. So what can we do about it? The best place to start with most any political issue is locally, and voter suppression is no exception, as it is generally up to states to set guidelines and restrictions on the voting process. You can begin by taking a look at your local and state legislation regarding voting and voter registration, and identify where laws are placing excessive roadblocks that may prevent certain groups from getting to the polls. Keep an eye out for voter ID laws, closure and consolidation of polling locations, accessibility, etc. Once you've identified how voter suppression is being carried out in your state, it's time to find other folks and organizations who are fighting back. Fortunately, there are dozens of organizations actively working to fight back to protect everyone's right to vote, including, but not limited to, the League of Women Voters, Fair Fight, the Voting Rights Alliance, the American Civil Liberties Union, Let America Vote, Asian Americans Advancing Justice, and the Brennan Center for Justice. Supporting these groups and groups like them by volunteering, organizing, donating, fundraising, or simply spreading the word can go a long way. If you're lacking time and money, refer a friend who can contribute in your place. Of course, if you're feeling really ambitious, you could run for office and become a lawmaker yourself. If you have any questions about voter suppression in general, organizing your community, running for office, or fighting against voter suppression in your state, please feel free to reach out to me through my website. I'd be more than happy to answer any of your questions and help connect you with organizers in your area. And lastly, if you're wanting to make a difference but are feeling overwhelmed, you're not alone. Just remember the words of the late Steve Jobs. The ones that are crazy enough to think that they can change the world are the ones that do. Together we can change the world, and part of doing that is protecting everyone's access to our democracy. So let's get organized.